High Sentinel Area stood before the Grand Observatory's primary viewing screen, her scaled hands trembling as she watched another colony world go dark. The crystalline structures of the lattice had consumed Outpost 7, its unique geometric patterns spreading across the planet's surface like a glittering cancer. She closed her inner eyelids, trying to maintain composure as was expected of a Zerlian of her rank, but the weight of billions of lives pressed against her consciousness. High Sentinel, the Council demands your presence. The voice belonged to Second Sentinel Kex, his usual melodic tones strained with barely contained fear. They've received the latest projections. Arya turned from the screen, her silver robes catching the light from the distant stars. The Zerlian civilization had spread across 17 systems over 10,000 years, building a society dedicated to scientific advancement and peaceful exploration. Now, in mere months, the lattice threatened to end it all. The council chamber was housed in a crystalline spire that once represented the pinnacle of Zerlian architecture. Now its geometric perfection seemed like a cruel mockery of the enemy that threatened to destroy them. 12 council members sat in their traditional circle, their scaled skin reflecting the chamber's soft blue light. The projections, High Sentinel, First Speaker Vax said without preamble. Share them. Arya activated her neural interface, projecting a holographic map of Zerlian space. Red markers indicated systems already lost to the lattice. At current progression rates, the lattice will reach our core worlds in 37 days. Zerlia Prime will fall in 42. The evacuation plans. Second Speaker Mira's voice carried the weight of age and authority. Impossible at this scale, Arya replied. We have ships for perhaps 1% of our population. The rest. She left the sentence unfinished. They all knew what it meant. The collective has abandoned us, Third Speaker Jex added. Our closest allies for millennia claim they cannot spare the resources for a doomed endeavor. The bitterness in his voice was palpable. Arya straightened her spine, knowing what she had to propose would be controversial. There is one option we haven't considered. A species the collective has deliberately avoided contact with, despite their rapid advancement. The chamber fell silent. First Speaker Vax's scales shifted color slightly, a sign of intense interest. You speak of the humans. Yes. Arya triggered another holographic display, showing a relatively young civilization spreading from a yellow star. They've achieved in centuries what took us millennia. Their technology is unorthodox, their methods unpredictable, but their military capabilities are undeniable. The collective claims they are too volatile. Second Speaker Mira objected. Their emotions rule them. They wage war among themselves. They also unite against external threats, Arya countered. Our deep space monitoring has recorded instances of their ships responding to distress calls from unknown species, often at great risk to themselves. They've established protected zones around developing civilizations. They fight pirates and raiders without compensation. Because they love violence, someone muttered. Because they cannot ignore suffering, Arya corrected. Yes, they are emotional. Yes, they are unpredictable. But right now, those traits might be exactly what we need. The lattice adapts to logical, predictable responses. Perhaps what we need is something it cannot anticipate. First Speaker Vax studied the human star charts for a long moment. The collective will not approve. The collective has already abandoned us to die, Arya replied. We have nothing left to lose. The debate raged for hours, but in the end, desperation won out over tradition. Arya stood in the transmission chamber, preparing to send humanity's first official first contact message. But this would be no diplomatic greeting, no careful cultural exchange. This would be a cry for help, a desperate plea from one civilization to another. As she composed the message, Arya thought about everything she'd learned about humans. They were passionate, fierce, and often chaotic. But they were also innovative, adaptable, and possessed an almost irrational drive to protect others. The collective saw these traits as dangerous. Perhaps they were right. But dangerous was exactly what the Zerlians needed now. The message was simple. To the people of Earth and her colonies, we are the Zerlian Confederation, and we face extinction. An entity we call the Lattice consumes entire worlds, adapting to all known defenses. The collective has abandoned us. You are our last hope. If you can help, if you will help, these are our coordinates. Aria sent the transmission, watching as it sped toward Earth at superluminal speeds. She had no way of knowing if the humans would respond, or if they would arrive in time if they did. But for the first time since the Lattice appeared, she felt something new: hope. In the following days, as more colonies fell and refugees flooded the core worlds, Aria kept watching the deep space monitors. The collective had called humans unpredictable, emotional, and dangerous. Standing in the observatory, watching another world die, Aria prayed they were right. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the heart of Earth Defense Command, surrounded by holographic displays showing the largest fleet mobilization in human history. The Zerlian distress signal had arrived just 18 hours ago, and already the gears of humanity's war machine were turning at unprecedented speed. "Status report," she commanded, her voice carrying across the bustling command center. Colonel James Rodriguez, her tactical officer, stepped forward. "The 2nd and 4th Rapid Response Fleets are already moving, Admiral. The Pathfinder squadrons will arrive at the Zerlian border in 6 hours. The main fleet," he gestured to a massive cluster of blue dots on the tactical display, "will have 300 ships ready in 24 hours. "Not fast enough," Chen muttered, studying the projections of the Lattice's advance. "What about the Prometheus Protocol?" The room fell silent. Dr. Emily Santos, head of Xenotechnology Research, spoke up from her station. "Admiral, it's still experimental. We've only tested it in simulations." "And those simulations worked," Chen countered. "The Zerlians don't have 24 hours. We need something that can travel faster than standard FTL, and we need it now." The Prometheus Protocol was humanity's latest breakthrough in faster-than-light travel. Instead of pushing through space, it created a temporary quantum tunnel between 2 points. Theoretical speeds were 10 times faster than conventional drives, but the energy requirements were enormous. "We could outfit the Hyperion battle group," Rodriguez suggested. 6 heavy cruisers, already equipped with the latest quantum cores. They'd need minimal modifications. Chen nodded. "Do it. Dr. Santos, you're going with them. If anyone can make this work, it's you." As the command center erupted into activity, Chen opened a secure channel to the United Earth government. President Maria Delgado's hologram appeared instantly. "They've approved it?" Chen asked without preamble. The president nodded. "Emergency session of Parliament just concluded. The vote was unanimous. Operation Stardust is go. You have full authority to commit any and all resources needed." "Thank you, Madam President. The Zerlians, they're about to see exactly what humanity can do." The next 12 hours were a blur of activity. The Hyperion battle group underwent rapid modifications in high orbit, while tactical teams studied every scrap of data the Zerlians had sent about the Lattice. Dr. Santos worked with her team to push the Prometheus Protocol beyond its tested limits. On the bridge of the UES Hyperion, Captain David Williams watched his crew prepare for humanity's first official contact with an alien civilization. The irony wasn't lost on him. After centuries of careful observation by the collective, humanity's debut on the galactic stage would be as saviors rather than supplicants. "Engineering reports ready," his XO announced. "Prometheus Protocol is online. Dr. Santos says we're as ready as we'll ever be." Williams opened a channel to the other 5 ships in the battle group. "All vessels, this is Hyperion Actual. We're about to attempt something that's never been done before. The Zerlians reached out to us because they believe humans can do what others call impossible. Let's prove them right." The quantum cores of all 6 ships hummed to life, their energy readings climbing beyond safety margins. Dr. Santos' voice came over the comm. Quantum tunnel forming. If this works, we'll exit less than a light year from Zerlia Prime. If it doesn't, well, let's focus on the positive. Williams smiled despite the tension. Typical human optimism, Doctor. All ships. Execute jump. The collective thought we were too unpredictable, she said to Rodriguez as they reviewed combat strategies. Too emotional, too prone to taking risks. They're about to learn why those aren't always bad things. Think the Zerlians are ready for what's coming? Rodriguez asked. Chen shook her head. No one's ready for humanity when we decide to show what we can really do. But they're about to learn what happens when humans decide something is worth fighting for. In the quantum tunnel, the Hyperion battle group pushed the boundaries of known physics, carrying humanity's response to a cry for help. They were about to prove that sometimes the most dangerous species in the galaxy could also be its greatest hope. The Hyperion battle group erupted from the quantum tunnel in a burst of exotic particles, their arrival sending shockwaves through Zerlian sensor networks. High Sentinel area watched in disbelief as 6 ships of unknown design materialized just outside the defensive perimeter of Zerlia Prime. The vessels were unlike anything in known space. Angular, aggressive, and radiating power signatures that shouldn't have been possible. Multiple unknown vessels detected, a Zerlian operator announced, panic evident in their usually controlled voice. No, area corrected, her voice firm. Not unknown. Those are human ships. The comm system crackled to life. Zerlia Prime, this is Captain David Williams of the UES Hyperion. Earth Defense Force Advanced Team reporting as requested. Sorry we're late. Had to push our engines a bit harder than usual. The casual tone, so different from formal Zerlian protocols, caught the control room staff off guard. But Area found herself smiling. Captain Williams, this is High Sentinel area. Your arrival is unexpected. Our calculations suggested it would take at least several days for any response to reach us. Ma'am, humans have a saying. When someone asks for help, you don't walk, you run. The tactical display suddenly lit up with new contacts. The lattice had detected the human arrival and was responding. Crystalline structures, beautiful and deadly, emerged from FTL travel in attack formation. Multiple lattice signatures detected. The Zerlian tactical officer reported. Standard assault pattern. They're not behaving as expected. Energy readings are erratic. Dr. Emily Santos's voice joined the command channel. Fascinating. The crystalline structures are attempting to analyze and adapt to our quantum wake signatures. They've never encountered Prometheus protocol technology before. It's confusing their adaptation algorithms. Then let's give them something else to think about. Williams responded. All ships, execute Battle Plan Delta. Dr. Santos, you're up. The 6 human vessels moved with impossible coordination, their formations shifting in ways that defied conventional tactical doctrine. The lattice structures, used to predictable, logical attack patterns, seemed to hesitate. From the Hyperion's weapon ports, streams of dark matter particles erupted. Another technology the collective had deemed too dangerous to pursue. The particles struck the crystalline formations, disrupting their molecular bonds at the quantum level. Where conventional weapons had merely been absorbed and adapted to, the human weapons caused the crystal structures to shatter and fragment. That's impossible, one of the Zerlian scientists whispered. The lattice adapts to all known forms of energy weapons. Dark matter isn't energy, Dr. Santos explained, her voice excited despite the battle raging around them. It's the absence of normal matter. The lattice can't adapt to something that, by its very nature, defies adaptation. The battle unfolded like nothing the Zerlians had ever witnessed. Human ships moved in chaotic patterns, their tactics seemingly random but devastatingly effective. When the lattice would begin to adapt to one attack pattern, the humans would switch to something completely different. Multiple lattice formations retreating, the tactical officer reported, disbelief evident in their voice. They're running away. Not running, Williams corrected. Regrouping. This was just a scout force. The main body is still coming, but now we know our weapons work. High Sentinel, we fought some time, but we need to prepare for the real fight. Area watched as the human ships took up defensive positions around Zerlia Prime. In just one brief engagement, they had achieved more against the Lattice than the Zerlians had in months of fighting. But something else struck her. The humans were excited, energized by the challenge rather than demoralized by it. "Captain Williams," she said, "your ship's arrival method, these weapons," the collective claimed humans were centuries away from such technology. A chuckle came over the comm. The collective has a habit of underestimating us. They see our emotions as a weakness, our unpredictability as a flaw. They don't understand that those traits drive us to push boundaries, to try things that more logical species would dismiss as impossible. The tactical display updated with new information. The main Lattice swarm was accelerating toward Zerlia Prime, its crystalline structures already beginning to evolve based on the recent encounter. "They're adapting," Area noted, worry creeping back into her voice. "Good," Williams replied, and Area could hear the smile in his voice. "Because so are we. Dr. Santos, begin Phase 2. Let's show them what happens when humans really decide to get creative." As Area watched the humans prepare for the coming battle, she began to understand why the collective had feared them. But she also understood something else. Sometimes the most dangerous species in the galaxy could be exactly what you needed to survive. The main Zerlian command center had transformed in the days following the humans' arrival. Where once there had been only the quiet hum of machinery and soft-spoken orders, now there was constant motion and animated discussion. Human technicians worked alongside Zerlian scientists, their different approaches creating solutions neither species would have developed alone. Dr. Emily Santos stood before a holographic display of a lattice crystal structure, gesturing enthusiastically as she explained her latest findings to a group of Zerlian researchers. The key isn't trying to prevent their adaptation, it's overwhelming their ability to process changes. They're like a computer with limited RAM. Give them too many variables at once, and they start to crash. High Sentinel Area watched the interaction with fascination. The humans' tendency to use casual analogies and emotional language had initially confused her people, but they were beginning to understand the value of this more intuitive approach to problem-solving. "Admiral Chen's main fleet will arrive within 6 hours," Captain Williams reported, joining Area at the command station. "The Lattice swarm is 3 hours behind them. It's going to be close." The collective always said that humans were too quick to resort to massive military action, Area observed. "Yet your response has been precisely calculated." Williams smiled. "The collective sees only what they expect to see. They focus on our aircraft carriers and battleships, missing the scientists and engineers that make them possible. Humanity's greatest weapon has always been our ability to innovate under pressure." The tactical display updated, showing the latest scan of the approaching Lattice swarm. The crystalline structures had evolved, developing new formations and defenses based on their earlier encounter with human forces. But this time, something was different. "They're not just adapting physically," one of the Zerlian analysts noted. "Their behavior patterns are changing. They're becoming less predictable. They're learning from us," Dr. Santos said, joining the discussion. "But that's exactly what we wanted. The more they try to mimic human unpredictability, the more they deviate from their core programming. They're literally adapting themselves into instability." An alert sounded throughout the command center. A new lattice formation had broken away from the main swarm, accelerating toward Zerlia Prime ahead of schedule. Its crystal structures were shifting in ways never before observed. "Multiple attack vectors," the tactical officer reported. "They're using chaotic pattern distribution, similar to human fleet formations." Williams grinned. "Perfect. They think they've figured us out, that they can beat us at our own game. But they're missing something fundamental about human nature. Lieutenant Park, execute Operation Wildcard." The 6 human ships of the advance team suddenly split apart, each taking a different position around Zerlia Prime. From their hulls emerged smaller craft, hundreds of them, each barely larger than a shuttle. Drone swarms, Arya realized. But our analysis suggested human AI technology was primitive compared to. They're not AI controlled, Dr. Santos interrupted. Each one has a human pilot. We've been training for this since we received your distress signal. The Zerlian command staff watched in amazement as the human pilots engaged the lattice formation, where the crystalline entities attempted to mimic human unpredictability through calculated variations. The human pilots were truly unpredictable. They acted on instinct, emotion, and split-second decisions that no algorithm could anticipate. Impossible, one of the Zerlian scientists whispered as the lattice formation began to break apart, its attempts at chaotic behavior falling into disarray when faced with genuine human chaos. No, Arya corrected, finally understanding what made humans so different. Not impossible. Just human. The collective was right about them being ruled by emotions and instincts. They were just wrong about that being a weakness. The battle continued to unfold, each engagement demonstrating new aspects of humanity's approach to warfare. When the lattice would adapt to one strategy, the humans would switch to something completely different. When the crystalline entities developed countermeasures to human technology, the pilots would find ways to use those countermeasures against them. The main fleet's arrival will be our best chance to end this, Williams explained as they watched the ongoing battle. But we needed to prove something first, that the lattice's greatest strength is actually its greatest weakness. It can adapt to anything, but it can't truly understand what it's adapting to. It can copy human unpredictability, but it can't replicate human intuition. And that's what the collective never understood about humans, Dr. Santos added. We're not just our technology or our military strength. We're our creativity, our impulses, our ability to make illogical choices that somehow work out. You can't calculate that. You can't adapt to it. You can only accept it and learn to work with it. As if to prove her point, a human pilot executed a maneuver that by all rational analysis should have been suicidal. Instead, it created a chain reaction that shattered an entire section of the lattice formation. The crystalline entities, attempting to adapt to this apparent death wish, tied themselves in logical knots trying to understand the motivation behind it. The main swarm is still coming, Arya reminded them, and it will have analyzed all of this. Good, Williams replied with that now familiar human confidence. Let them analyze. Let them adapt. Because the more they try to understand humanity, the further they get from what makes them dangerous. Sometimes the best way to fight an adaptive enemy is to make them adapt themselves right into a corner. The tactical display updated again, showing the approaching human main fleet, hundreds of ships carrying the combined might of Earth's military forces. But now Arya understood that the real weapon wasn't the ships or their technology. It was the humans themselves, their wonderful, terrifying unpredictability about to be unleashed on an enemy that had never faced anything like it. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the EDF Achilles, watching as the combined human fleet emerged from FTL travel into the Zerlian home system. 300 ships strong, they represented the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. But as she studied the tactical display showing the approaching lattice swarm, she knew that numbers alone wouldn't win this fight. All ships report ready, Colonel Rodriguez announced from his tactical station. The Zerlian defense grid has been reconfigured to our specifications. Dr. Santos, Chen called over the fleet-wide channel. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Yes, Admiral. The scientist's voice was tense with excitement. The lattice has evolved exactly as we predicted. They've completely restructured themselves trying to match human tactical patterns. They're more vulnerable now than they've ever been. The massive crystalline swarm filled the long-range sensors, its structures no longer showing the elegant geometric patterns that had made it so effective against conventional forces. In trying to adapt to human unpredictability, The lattice had twisted itself into chaotic formations that defied its own nature. High Sentinel area, Chen called. Is your team ready? Yes, Admiral, the Zerlian leader responded. Though I must admit, your plan seems insane. Chen finished with a smile. That's exactly why it's going to work. The plan was perhaps the most human strategy ever conceived. Instead of trying to destroy the lattice, they were going to overload its adaptive capabilities so completely that it would effectively destroy itself. It was the kind of plan that the logical, methodical collective would never have considered, which was precisely why it had a chance of succeeding. All ships, execute Battle Plan Omega, Chen commanded. Show them what humanity does best. The human fleet split into dozens of smaller groups, each implementing a different tactical doctrine. Some ships charged forward aggressively, others hung back with long-range weapons, some moved in tight formations, others seemed to operate completely independently. There was no pattern, no logic to their movements that the lattice could analyze and adapt to. From the surface of Zerlia Prime, the combined human-Zerlian science team activated their secret weapon. Dr. Santos had discovered that the lattice's adaptive capabilities relied on quantum-level observations, so they gave it something impossible to observe: a massive quantum uncertainty field that made every human ship exist in multiple tactical states simultaneously. The lattice is attempting to compensate, a Zerlian scientist reported. Their crystalline structure is becoming unstable as they try to adapt to all possible states at once. The battle that followed defied conventional description. Human ships executed maneuvers that violated basic tactical doctrine, their quantum uncertain states making them appear to be everywhere and nowhere at once. The lattice, desperately trying to counter every possible human action simultaneously, began to tear itself apart. Energy readings from the lattice are approaching critical levels, Rodriguez reported. They're burning out their own systems trying to process too many variables. Chen watched as the crystalline structures began to fragment, their perfect geometries dissolving into chaos. Now, Dr. Santos, initiate the final phase. From the Hyperion battle group, now integrated with the main fleet, a series of quantum pulses emerged. These weren't weapons in the conventional sense. They were carrier waves, broadcasting human consciousness itself. The emotional, instinctive, gloriously irrational nature of human thought was transmitted directly into the lattice's adaptive matrix. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The lattice, an entity built on logic and predictable patterns, was suddenly flooded with human unpredictability at its most fundamental level. Its attempts to adapt became increasingly erratic as it tried to process concepts like intuition, emotional decision-making, and creative problem-solving. The lattice's core structure is collapsing, Dr. Santos reported, her voice filled with awe. They're not just failing to adapt. They're actively rejecting their own programming. It's like watching a computer try to process poetry until it short-circuits. The crystalline swarm began to disintegrate, its remaining structures either shutting down or destroying themselves in failed adaptation attempts. As the last fragments winked out of existence, a profound silence fell over the command channels. High Sentinel area broke the silence first. In all our history, in all the collected knowledge of the collective, there has never been a victory like this. You didn't just defeat the lattice. You made it defeat itself by forcing it to confront something it could never understand. Human nature itself. That's the thing about being human, Chen replied. We're at our best when we're doing what everyone else thinks is impossible. In the days that followed, as human and Zerlian ships began the work of securing the freed systems, something extraordinary happened. The collective, which had abandoned the Zerlians to their fate, arrived to find their carefully ordered galaxy changed forever. Humanity, the species they had deemed too dangerous to contact, had done what their logic and caution could not. They'll have to acknowledge us now, Williams commented as he and Aria watched the first collective ships arrive. They'll do more than that, Aria replied. You've shown us all something we didn't understand before. Sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't order or logic or predictability. Sometimes it's the beautiful chaos of being human. As the combined fleet began the journey home, Chen reflected on how this victory would change both their civilizations. The Xerlians had learned to embrace unpredictability, while humanity had found its place in the galactic community, not as the dangerous outsiders the collective had feared, but as protectors, innovators, and living proof that being different wasn't a weakness, but a strength. The legacy of this battle would echo through the generations, a testament to the power of human nature, the value of divergent thinking, and the unstoppable force that emerges when logic and emotion, order and chaos, find their perfect balance.